Hello, my name is Paul Sevilla, and I'm a librarian for the Livermore Public Library. Tonight's program is part of Livermore Reads Together, celebrating the featured book, The Reason I Jump, The Inner Voice of a 13-year-old Boy with Autism by Naoki Higashida. Thank you to the Friends of the Livermore Public Library for their generous support of Livermore Reads Together. I'm delighted to introduce my co-host this evening. Cynthia Patton is an attorney, activist, educator, and founder of the nonprofit Autism A to Z. Her award-winning book has appeared in 16 anthologies, numerous publications, on stage, and in her book, Across an Aqueous Moon, Travels in Autism. She has served as the City of Livermore's Poet Laureate since 2017. Hello, Cynthia.
Hi, Paul.
And now I'm honored to introduce this evening's guest. Let me tell you about her. Temple Grandin is a professor of animal science at Colorado State University. When she was 2.5 years old, she had no speech and all the symptoms of severe autism. Early intensive speech therapy enabled her to speak by age 4. Her mother always encouraged her interest in art and urged her to draw many different things. Good teachers and mentors were essential for Temple's success. Her high school science teacher challenged her with interesting projects where she had to figure out how to make things work. When studying in school became a pathway to becoming a scientist, she was motivated to study. An HBO movie titled Temple Grandin was made about her life, and Temple was inducted into the National Women's Hall of Fame and the Academy of Arts and Sciences. Facilities she has designed handled over half the cattle in the US. Some of her most important books are New York Times bestsellers, Animal in Translation, Thinking in Pictures, The Autistic Brain, which I'm reading right now, and The Way I See It. Yes, riding horses and caring for them helped her get through difficult teenage years where she was bullied and teased. Temple has traveled all over the world giving talks about autism, and tonight she is here with us. Hello, Temple.
Hi, it's great to be here.
All right. How are you, Temple?
I'm just fine.
Okay. Well, why don't we begin? We got lots of good questions.
Okay, well, fine.
To ask you. So, Cynthia.
Want me to start?
Yes.
Okay. In your opinion, Temple, what are some of the common misconceptions about autism and how can we dispel them?
Now, one of the problems you got with autism is you're going all the way from Elon Musk and Einstein to somebody who can't dress themselves. And they over the years, they've changed the profile. But the basic problem in autism's in fully verbal segment is a brain can be more thinking and cognitive, or a brain can be more social emotional. You take someone like Elon Musk, he sold all his mansions. That was a full page spread in the business section of the Wall Street Journal, bought a boxable prefab house to live down in his spaceport because rockets and cars are just so much more interesting than social stuff. And I can relate to that. You see, in the real milder forms, it's just a personality variation. It's a true continuous trait. And you look at the genetics as truly continuous. Then the other half of the population is more social emotional. And you know, if you don't have some people interested in what they do, well, we wouldn't even have any technology. I just listened to some young high school scientists early, and that's why I was late coming onto this. You know, on the practice part of this, brilliant high school seniors doing genetics research, computer programs, looking at black holes, looking at making a better device for an autonomous car to judge distances, a radar device for that. That one I actually understood better. And very, you know, super brilliant. And that's, well, you're going to have to explain why your radar is better than what the car already has in a way that regular people can understand it. Well, I can understand it because it uses less bandwidth, and bandwidth costs money.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, and so how does autism help you connect in a unique way to animals?
Well, I'm a total visual thinker. Everything I think about is a picture. In fact, in this book here, Animals in Translation, this is where I talk about how autism helped me understand animals. Everything I think about is a picture. An animal doesn't think in words. Animals live in a sensory-based world. So when I first started working with cattle, it was obvious to me to look at what cattle were looking at going through a chute. And if there was a coat hanging on a fence, they'd stop at that. Or there was a little bright dot of light, they would stop. And other people didn't notice those things. And you get into some of the discussions about animal consciousness. I think people who are very, very verbal in their thinking, they have a hard time understanding how a dog could think without words. For me, it's like, yeah, it's obvious to me that a dog can think.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, a dog is not going to make a rocket ship and fly to the moon. It's not going to do that. But dogs are certainly able to decide what they're going to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think it was the first time that I heard you talk, right after my own daughter was diagnosed, and you were talking about your book, Thinking in Pictures, and you were talking about what it is like to be a visual thinker. So for those who are watching who haven't read that book, can you describe in a little more detail, like what that means when you say you're a visual thinker?
Well, the HBO movie Temple Grandin shows us exactly. But okay, like today, we were getting ready for my class tomorrow, and we got to get cattle lined up to use in the lab for handling, show the students how to handle cattle. And when I'm talking about that, now I see our experiment station, cattle handling building, the kind of cattle I'd like to have. I see them. And you see, there's nothing abstract about that. I'm starting to see things about how we're going to conduct the lab, and now I'm thinking about when we had to do it by video, and that was horrible. So now it's associative thinking. So now I've gone back to the faculty meeting we had when they closed the university. Okay, but you see, it's associative. Visual thinking is associative. So I was thinking about the cattle that we were going to use in class next week to have the right cattle for cattle handling lab. Then I thought about when we had to do it in the video, which was dreadful. And then that made me think about the meeting we had 2 years ago, a faculty meeting where they closed the university, and we had 10 days to get our classes online. And there was a stampede to Best Buy. And now I see the Best Buy store and the inside of it. And now I'm in the shopping file. So I was just in the grocery store, and I'm seeing it now. Buy some essentials like toilet paper. I'm now seeing that. It's one of the things I bought this afternoon, but it's associative, but there is a logic to the association. See, and I'm just showing you how that association works.
Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned the HBO movie, which I just recently watched with Claire Danes starring as yourself. I thought it was brilliant, and really, it's a great movie. What did you think about it? Do you think
I thought they did a great job. It showed how visual thinking works absolutely accurately. Also, all the projects that I made were in the movie. I mean, the geek side of me absolutely likes that. Main characters were shown, really nicely. Cattle handling was shown accurately.
Really?
Yes. I said, we're not having those stupid Holstein steers they had in City Slickers that you'd never have on a Western ranch.
Yeah, absolutely.
Those are wrong kind of cattle, and if you're in the industry, it just looks dumb.
Yeah, it definitely opened my eyes to things to new things that I didn't know about. Like I didn't know about the cattle industry a lot. So yeah, it's great. Did you think so you think it portrayed your life accurately?
Well, of course, it's a 2-hour movie. They got to compress some things, but I love the fact that my drawings were in the movie, that in the titles, an actual shop drawing used to build a piece of equipment actually featured in the titles. I mean, to me, that is like really super cool. Like the thing with the gear goes around the conveyor, that drawing was actually used to build that conveyor. See, and the geek side of me thinks that's really cool.
Do you still have your squeeze machine?
I still have it, but it broke about 10 years ago. I never got around to fixing it. But I was one of the ones where deep pressure was calming, and that's calming to some people with autism. It's also calming to dogs, because the squeeze machine is where the idea for the thunder shirt came from for dogs.
Did your sensory needs, I mean, this I'm sort of asking on behalf of my daughter, did your sensory needs decrease over time, as you got older?
Well, one of the things that helped decrease it, I've been on antidepressant drugs since my early 30s, and I described that in detail in my book, Thinking in Pictures. And my nervous system was in a constant state of anxiety for no reason. And a little low dose of an antidepressant, really low dose, has to be low dose.
Brings you down.
It's too high a dose. I know a lot of really talented visual thinkers with a little tiny dose of Prozac. It makes a difference, big difference. Also, exercise. And I do 100 sit-ups every night, and I despise every one of them. I despise exercise. I find that I've got to do it.
Yeah, that's true for my daughter as well. She really finds that a weighted blanket helps.
That's helpful for a lot of people. I mean, these are things that you can try, and weighted blankets are not expensive, so that's something you can try.
Yeah, we have them throughout our house, so that's been, as she's gotten older, she'll use that. But we also have a swing in our house, but okay. So next question on here. What do you want neurotypicals to understand about autism?
Well, one of the things is that a lot of technology, a lot of inventions, a lot of art, they wouldn't have without some autism. And in a lot of my talks, I talk about the different kinds of minds. I'm the object visualizer, and that's discussed in the autistic brain. I'm an object visualizer. Everything's a picture. Absolutely can't do algebra. And object visualizers, and I worked with plenty of them when we were out installing equipment in meat plants. They're the ones that invent really clever equipment. They're what I call the clever engineering department. Then you have your visual spatial mathematical engineers. They think in patterns and also music. And then you have, of course, your verbal thinkers. And there's research that shows these different kinds of minds exist. And they've got complementary skills. I got a new book coming out in the fall called Visual Thinking by Temple Grandin and Betsy Lerner. And it's already ready for pre-orders on Amazon. Visual Thinking by Temple Grandin and Betsy Lerner. And I'm very, very concerned now about skill loss. They've taken a lot of the skilled trades out of the schools. Let me tell you, we need the clever engineering department just to keep things going. But I worked with people that owned large companies that had like 20 patents on mechanical equipment. They're selling it all around the world. And they'd be in special ed today. They were saved by the welding class or the drafting class.
Yeah, we don't have those anymore.
Well, it's a huge mistake, because right now you want to put in a poultry processing plant. How about 100 shipping containers from Holland? Because they're making the equipment. You want a state-of-the-art electronic chip making machine that makes the smallest chips? It comes from Holland. Even though the technology was invented here in our universities, we didn't end up making it. I just saw a state-of-the-art electron microscope. In fact, I got a picture of it. In fact, I could show you a picture of it. It's from Germany. The state-of-the-art electronic microscope. I saw it just a couple of days ago. Yeah, we've got to get serious about this. And that was the reason for doing the book on visual thinking. And I do have some stuff in the autistic brain on jobs. And the autistic brain's got some of the earlier research, but my new book is going to have lots of research. What I am telling you is totally evidence-based. I'm very, very concerned, especially that my kind of mind's got to screen out. We can't do algebra. I've never passed an algebra class. I managed to get out of it. Thank goodness when I was in college, algebra wasn't the required math class. It was probability matrices and statistics. Tons of tutoring. I got through it. Thank you, Mr. Dion, the math teacher.
I really had trouble with algebra too. My daughter, it was super easy.
Well, you see, that's the mathematical mind. You see, it's like thinking in a photorealistic picture versus thinking in a pattern. Mathematicians are pattern thinkers. And what a lot of people don't realize about these little math genius kids is that the verbal thinkers want them to do their work step by step and show the work. That's not how these math kids think. They just
gets
see the
answer.
pattern and they'll give you the answer, and let them do it that way. Don't frustrate them, making them do step by step, and then you turn into a behavior problem when they ought to be doing college math in 4th grade.
She does it all in her head. It really
That's the way math kids work.
Yeah, I give her like the correct answer and the wrong answer, and she'll always get the correct answer. She can multiply like like 398 by 28, in her head. And I have to get the calculator out and do it. And yeah, it's
I
really
can't do any of that stuff in my head.
no, I
But
can't.
you see, visualizing things when I designed equipment, like I just had to do a homework assignment for the class, and I make a new one each semester so that they can't archive them in homework archives, because I make a new original drawing. They have to draw a cattle handling facility, so I'll draw a site that they have to build it out. Oh, like I put warehouse on it, and I put some water tanks on it, and they're gonna have to design around it. Learn how to do a scale drawing.
Well, you actually said one of the times I heard you talk that you can actually do like basically CAD software in your head. And you thought everyone, I think if I remember correctly, you said you thought everyone could do that.
Well, you see, I didn't know until I was in my late 30s that other people don't think in pictures. I did not know that. And it was a shock when I learned. I said, I got to get a piece of paper here. I was at a meeting and I talked to a speech therapist about how she thinks. And I asked her to think about a church steeple. Now, you ask visual thinkers that, they'll start naming off where the churches are located. They come up like a bunch of PowerPoint slides. But this speech therapist, this is all she got. Just this pointy thing. Very, very, very vague.
Yeah.
And that was in my late 30s, I discovered that. That was my first, and then the research on a lot of this stuff, I didn't find until I did the Autistic Brain book. I'd already figured out, well, before we did the Autistic Brain book, some people thought in pictures, some thought in patterns, and some thought in words. And then I was ecstatic one night at 3 o'clock in the morning. I found the paper in the reference list of a rather boring paper on visual perception, a paper that showed that object visualization and visual spatial mathematical minds really do exist. And now for the new book on visual thinking, I got tons more research in there. You want evidence-based, I'll give you evidence-based.
Wow. Oh, I can't wait to see that, to have that book in our library collection.
Well, you can pre-order it right now.
Oh, you can pre-order it right
You
now?
can pre-order it. You have to put in
Amazon?
Temple Grandin visual thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. All right.
And then you can pre-order it.
Okay. So what do you think, Temple, what do you think has caused the huge increase in numbers of people impacted by autism in the last 3 decades?
I think some of it is the diagnostic guideline has changed. See, the problem you've got with these diagnoses, nobody sits in a conference room and changes the diagnosis for tuberculosis or COVID. You either have it or you don't with a lab test. But the problem is the guidelines for autism, it's a behavioral profile. Originally, the original guideline in the 80s, you had to have speech delay, definite speech delay to have autistic. Then in the early 90s, they added the Asperger's, which is socially awkward with no speech delay. You see, so that widened it.
Right.
And then in 2013, they merged it all together.
Hmm.
So now you're going from Elon Musk to somebody who can't dress themselves with the same name, which to me makes no sense. So some of that's increased detection. And then since autism services are reimbursed by insurance, he will make sure they get into them. I think that's also a factor. But the diagnosis has been broadened. You know, I definitely, according to the old guideline, would be autistic because I did not speak until age 4.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, let's see. Okay, this is a friend of mine gave me this question. At what age did you realize you had autism or were just different from others?
When I really had the worst time with this was when I was a teenager. High school was the worst part of my life. Elementary school went fairly well. My teacher explained to the other kids that I had a disability that wasn't visible like a wheelchair, and they needed to be helping me, not torturing me. High school, horrible. Large high school did not work. Absolutely did not work. Bullied all the time. Only places I was not teased and bullied was friends through shared interests. Horses, electronics, and model rockets. Those were refuges away from teasing. And I was just on a call this earlier, and we were talking about, you know, social groups. Well, that didn't work. It worked much better for the model rocket club coach to use that as a social group. Now we made model rockets. And one of the things that he did was, I was like 17, 18 years old. And there was another little kid that was about 12. And he had really worked hard on his rockets. And if you just looked at the rockets that were turned out, I probably should have won the top award. But Mr. Carlock, my science teacher, gave it to Stuart. And I realized why he did that. Because Stuart had worked really, really hard as a younger kid, wanted to encourage him. Okay, that's an example of using model rocket club to teach a social thing. You see, everything I think about is specific examples. Verbal thinkers are very top down with a big general principle, like an inclusive classroom. But then how do you implement it? Okay, I'm going to think about different types of inclusion. Wheelchairs, that's different than maybe a nonverbal autistic kid. Or maybe, okay, like science, a kid that's really good at science would be on the spectrum.
Yeah. Bullying is such a huge problem.
Oh, it's horrible. It's absolutely horrible.
Yeah.
And then the stuff online, I mean, I'm thinking about when I went riding with my roommate, well, I didn't have a phone buzzing in my pocket, texting me saying all kinds of horrible things and calling me bones and tape recorder. Those are the names they called me in high school.
Tape recorder.
Tape recorder. And
Yeah.
I couldn't figure out why they called me that. But then I finally figured out that I was always using the same phrases.
Yeah. My
That's why they
daughter.
called it tape recorder.
Yeah. No one's actually thought to bully my daughter about that, but she's a big tape recorder. Let's see. What's the next question? I think we've kind of already talked about this. Has an increase in autism awareness brought about any additional challenges for you in particular, for the autism community in general? I mean, we kind of
That's kind of really broad and vague. That's hard to answer.
Yeah.
Things have got to be more specific. One of the problems I run into, like, okay, someone will write in on the chat, well, they have a problem, certain problem with their kid. And I don't have enough information. I don't even know the age. We're dealing with a 3-year-old, an elementary school kid, a teenager. What is the problem?
Yeah.
You know, I need more information. And I have people do the same thing, dog behavior problems or horse behavior problems. And I usually find I got to ask 3 or 4 more questions to get more information. So my horse went berserk. Well, where did he go berserk? And then I question and find out that it's only in a certain place he went berserk that was associated with an accident.
Yeah.
But I had to ask 3 or 4 questions to find that out.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's switch gears a little
Well,
bit.
I'm really glad that somebody here liked Calling All Minds.
Oh yeah, you saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that.
Calling All Minds.
My favorite project in that book was a little bird kite. And I made that when I was really young. And I tinkered and I tinkered and I tinkered to get it to fly. And I didn't know how to ride a bike at that point. I'd lay it out on the ground, rev my tri-cup. I can remember doing it. And I had to do all kinds of tinkering to get it to work. And kids today don't tinker. They're scared to death to make a mistake. And I think part of the problem with that is that they don't do those things. And then I found recreating that kind of grown up than old grown up wasn't all that easy because they couldn't buy the same art paper that I'd used. File folder doesn't fly the same way as this art textured art paper would fly.
Interesting.
Yeah. So
Okay.
we have some questions submitted by the library by the community, and some
Okay.
of them came from 10-year-old Ava, who's Ava. If you're here, can you raise your hand if you're here? I know
Well, she's in the library right now.
No, she's here in our chat.
Okay.
Oh yeah, Ava's here. Yeah, she's raising her hand. Okay. All right. So I know this month is Women's History Month. So Ava's question for you is, do you have a message for young women and girls?
Well, I can tell you, starting out in the cattle industry in the 70s, being a woman was a big barrier. Autism was a non-issue. I got kicked out of Scottsdale Feed Yard and they did put bull testicles on my car. And that was really bad. And I had to make myself really good at what I did. And the way I sold jobs is I would show people my drawings. Like, here's some of my drawings that are in my Thinking in Pictures book. And I would show people my drawings. And I got respect for that. I also could see doorways to opportunity. There's a scene in the movie where I go up and I get the farm editor's card because I knew if I wrote for that magazine, that would help my career. And then I delivered a decent article. And then I got a press pass that got me into all kinds of things. See, a lot of people don't see those doors. First of all, they're too afraid to go up and get the card. Then after they get the card, they don't deliver the goods.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And I see a lot of kids that have really great skills. And the way I sold work was to show the portfolio off. And then I wrote about my projects. I couldn't afford $400 a month ads in Beef Magazine then. And that's what they were back in the 70s.
Wow.
I had to make myself really good at what I did. No, it wasn't easy. Make yourself really, really good. That's what I did. And I had a very strong motivation to prove I was not stupid. And I went to a very interesting talk for at-risk youth just a few months ago, and the grandson of Gandhi gave a talk.
Wow.
I was very happy I went to this talk. And he said, and he had a quote in there, which unfortunately I couldn't find in his book, that anger is like electricity. You can use it to power your house and like power the computer and good things, or it can be like a bolt of lightning and just bust stuff up. And this sort of prove I wasn't stupid. That was sort of like anger and like electricity, like the very, very controlled. Because after I got kicked out of Scottsdale Feed Yard, I went down to the magazine and said, oh, I've already written one article. I'd like to do a column for you. That was my revenge against Scottsdale Feed Yard, was to start doing a column where anger that's destructive would be someone go back and, well, break the windows in their office or something like that. You see, that'd be destructive anger. I channeled, it was like determination. Determination to prove I wasn't stupid. And then in the movie, it showed those dipping vat projects. They were shown very accurately. I did those projects and drew the drawings for them. And they came out really well. And I had a lot of, the discrimination all came from the foreman level. It wasn't the owners of the places. It wasn't the cowboys. It was the middle management. That's where all my trouble was.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, those scenes in the movie really affected me. And I just love the way you handled it. And just what you said when they smeared the bull
Bull
testicles
testicles.
on your windshield, and how you just, yeah, you use your anger to motivate to keep going.
But you
get through
see,
those
it
doors.
was very, you see, you get thinking, now, what kind of motivation was that? Because I said, I'm going to prove I can do it. And, you know, a lot of people get what I'm going to call hot anger. That's very destructive. Okay, let's go back and do something to their office. Okay, that would be destructive. And no, my revenge was, I'm going to prove I can do it. I'm going to get a press pass. They're going to have to let me in all these places.
Yeah.
And this is where my writing skills helped. I had decent writing skills. I want to thank my teachers in grade school and middle school for marking up my papers and teaching me how to write. Because writing has been a very, very important part of my career. Because I would design a project and then I wrote about it.
Oh, yeah. How many books do you have now?
Well, my very first book was Emergence Labeled Autistic in the mid 80s. And that I was approached by a publisher on that. And then my second book in the early 90s was Livestock Handling and Transport, which is a textbook with multiple authors. I was an editor, and the publisher approached me on that one. And then Thinking in Pictures, an agent named Pat Bryman approached me after Oliver Sacks had written an article about me. So those were my early books.
Got to be like at least 15, right?
Oh yeah, I've got a bunch.
Yeah.
And I've got Thinking in Pictures, there's no co-author on that. And then my textbooks material, there's no co-author. Like I've got a book here on animal welfare. I've got chapters in this, and that's more technical writing. And there's no co-author there. But my other books, you see, this is where the different minds working together. I need the more verbal co-author for the organization. And that's the different minds working together with complementary skills. Really important.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Well, let's pick another question from Ava.
Yeah.
Let me see. Let me see. So, what are some women you would like? Ava asked, what are some women you would like to recognize?
Well, I like to recognize Jane Goodall because she was a total pioneer. Katherine Johnson, I really admire her. And the thing that's horrible is I did not know she existed. And I was a big NASA fanatic until I saw the movie. And I can tell you the scene that resonated the most with me was when they were not going to let her into the project meeting. That I'm going, I've seen that door. But one thing that was done right with Katherine Johnson, even though she was horribly discriminated against, her math education was handled right. When she was a little girl, they moved her way ahead in math. That was done right. Her math skills were developed and they moved her grades ahead in math. No, that was the right thing to do. But, people that once in a while, notice you've written a quote up that anger's like electricity. But you see, there's two kinds of electricity. There is the constructive electricity that's running this computer right now. It's got the lights on in the house. That's like the good electricity that gets things done. And then there's destructive electricity. It's like bolts of lightning that you don't want to be doing that. You want to use the good electricity. Electricity can be used to power our cars, power our house, power our computers, or you can just use it to bust up stuff like bolts of lightning. And that's not the thing to do.
Yep.
And I thought that was a beautiful analogy. And I wish that he'd put it in his book, and he hadn't. It was just in the talk. That really resonated with me because it was sort of like, I am going to prove I'm not stupid. I can really do things.
And you did.
And I worked very hard at it.
Yeah, you did.
And there were good people that helped me. There was Jim, the contractor, had seen my drawings, starting a tiny construction company. And he was a former Marine Corps captain. He seeked me out to design jobs, sell jobs, and design jobs. So there were good people in the cattle industry. There were good people that helped me a lot. Some of the feed yard owners were really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember in the movie there was someone who signed your release, your permission to work in the.
Well, there were definitely some good people in the industry that helped me.
Yeah.
This is where mentors get attracted to ability. And I'm a big believer in developing the thing the kid is good at. There's too much emphasis on the deficits, not enough emphasis on building up the thing they can be good at. And the problem today is I'm seeing too many smart kids getting addicted to video games, and they're not getting wonderful jobs in the video game industry. I wish they were becoming programmers and animators, but that's not what's happening with most of them.
No.
You can wean them off with car mechanics. There's been 3 successful wean-offs that I know about. And I'm not talking about changing oil. I'm talking serious car, engine
Mhm.
renewals, real
Mhm.
serious stuff.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Do you still work out in the field a lot? Yeah.
Well, COVID shut a lot of stuff down. And then I was doing some really nice poultry consulting, and then avian influenza is killing chickens now. And, everyone's worried about that.
Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned earlier that you're going back to in-person teaching tomorrow.
Yeah, we did it in person last semester too. And I've been traveling now for the last year, but I didn't dare. I was grounded for a whole year because of my age. I didn't dare travel until I was vaccinated. But now I'm traveling in the US normally. Planes are packed. They've cut down the amount of flights. The airlines are understaffed. Everything's understaffed. I mean, you go in the airport, and I went over there. I like to go to the Ben and Jerry's ice cream stand in the Denver airport. I go over there to have lunch at the Chinese place at Panda. And while I'm eating lunch, he closes for lunch because they only have one person in there. Just the other day. And now I see it. And I look over to the Ben and Jerry's, and the light is turned off. Now I can't wait for him to come back from lunch. I just have to go.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
But that annoyed me. That was just the other day.
Yeah. We're all having those experiences, I think.
I just can't believe it. It's the amount of it. Like I went in another restaurant in the Denver airport. They had a ton of tables, but they had no staff. That was just a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, I know.
Well, here's somebody
Yeah.
asking about ABA. That always comes up.
Yeah. What is your opinion of ABA?
Depends upon how you do it. There's such a big variety of ABA. And there's some that's really good, and there's some that's really rigid and terrible. And the kind of stuff that's not good is, sitting at the table and doing a lot of rigid stuff. The good ABA, a good teacher will get in there with a 3-year-old and just get that kid learning words, learning how to take turns at games, learning skills like dressing themselves, just basic skills. And the thing I always ask parents, I don't really care what the name of the program is. Do you have an effective teacher? Now I'm talking early intervention, 2 and 3-year-olds. An effective teacher does 4 things. I don't care what the training is. More speech, more waiting at turn taking at games, and basic skills. And then the kid should like going to therapy. And if you're getting that with your 3-year-old, there's nonverbal, then you've got an effective teacher. And for some tips, slow down when you talk to these kids. There's slow processing speed, and give them time to respond. They're like a phone with 1 bar. It takes time to respond.
That's such a great analogy.
Yeah, I think it really explains the problem, because if I was a computer, it's like I got this great big huge memory, the warehouse is full of computers, but I'm accessing it to a phone with 1 bar. Now that has no effect on design work. That doesn't require working memory.
Yeah.
Well, here's a question from Katie. How did your sensitivity to clothes, lights, and other sensations change as you grew older? Katie,
But what I've had basically had to do with that is to have work clothes and dress clothes that feel about the same. Because where I have problems is when I would wear shorts in the summer, then I didn't want to wear long pants because I couldn't stand the feeling of the long pants. And I just wear long pants all the time. It's just easier. And I've got to have stuff that doesn't itch.
Mhm.
And they've cheapened up some of the khakis. There was one brand of khakis I used to love, and I hate them now because they cheapened up the cotton and they itch. And I just can't have that.
Wait, so you actually, if you wore like long sleeves, then in the summer you don't want to switch to short sleeves? Just
Well,
because-
my arms weren't the problem. It was more my legs.
Interesting.
The other thing is, then I put the pants on when it was getting cold in the fall, and it'd take me about over a week to get used to them. Eventually, I would get used to them.
Okay.
Yeah, eventually I'd get used to them.
Explain something about my daughter. Okay.
Yeah, it's the change. So it's
It's the
easier.
change,
Now, I
yeah.
can tell you in girls' clothes, the things I would like, it's fashionable now for girls to wear those little leggings. I would have loved those. I'd have absolutely no problem. I want to wear them all the time. And you can get them in different colors and
Yeah,
wear them all the time.
yeah. My daughter did. Yeah.
Well,
Then
you see in
finally-
that kind of stuff I liked.
Finally, she
Oh.
graduated to jeans, but but
Well, the thing is that, well, and I also have to, I only have carry-on bags. So after I lost a few bags, I learned if it doesn't fit in that overhead, you don't need it,
yeah.
period. It's that simple.
All right.
Okay. Do we have any more questions from the,
Yeah, there is a question here from Nancy, and it relates to one of my questions as well. So Nancy's question is, what are practical ways we can help a family with an autistic teenager?
Well, I need to learn a little more about this.
Right.
Is he fully verbal? What's the problem? They're probably getting bullied. And that tends to be a problem. I want to find something they can do to get friends who shared interests. And I'd rather get them involved with something that might be career relevant. Art, music, fixing cars, computer programming.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the problems I see parents getting locked into the label of autism. And that's why with Deborah Moore, it came out this book, Navigating Autism. And Deborah Moore came up with this really great saying, label locking. And I've seen parents get so label locked that you might have two computer programmer parents and their kid's really good at math and they don't think to teach the kid programming. And I said, why don't you teach your kid programming? And they hadn't thought of it. And they're both programmers because they got so hung up on the label.
Mhm.
yeah.
And I'm seeing too many kids aren't learning basic skills like shopping and ordering food in restaurants. Some moms just can't let go to let their kid run in the store and buy something.
Yeah.
Paul, what was the question again? How,
Well, the question is, basically, how can we better support people with autism and their caregivers?
Well, you need to get early intervention for little kids. It's one of the things we need to do. Where we're falling down the most now is the transition from school to work.
yeah.
That's where things are falling down. Because the people I've worked with people that own metal fabrication shops. I worked with one guy who actually owns a corporate jet, and he's just as autistic as he can be. I call him Willy Wonka in stainless steel. I can't tell you what he makes, what he does. I signed an NDA. But this is a guy where we discussed he's in his 70s, all his diagnoses. And he's one of these mechanical geniuses who started washing equipment in a food processing plant. And he invented all this stuff, got a jillion patents. You see, this is the thing that kind of makes me go crazy as I go back and forth from the industrial world and the autism world. And what we got to teach these kids how to work. I have granddads. I talk to granddads all the time who find out they're autistic when the kids are diagnosed. Granddad's a pharmacist, an engineer, an accountant. a a math teacher, just all kinds of jobs. And they had paper routes at age 11. We've got to start teaching working skills early, where how do you do a task on a schedule outside the home?
Yeah, I just read something. I think it was one of the previous talks, the Full Employment Act for, the Autism Full Employment Act. And I was reading their previous book, and there's a staggering figure that something like only 3% of individuals on the spectrum are actually fully, gainfully
Well, this is the
employed.
problem, and some of it's just label locking. And okay, the people that I personally worked with that were autistic were either welding inventors, metal shop kind of inventors, or the drawings, doing the drafting. I definitely worked with some drafting people that were definitely autistic, and they were some of the best draftsmen in the industry, laying out entire factories, laying out, it's just inventing stuff.
Right,
The title of draftsman,
right.
and doing a ton of engineering.
That's not, I don't
Sign
even
off as
care.
draftsman, but
I don't
that's but the problem is we're getting kids going, California is especially bad, is we're getting kids going through school and they're not getting exposed to things like drafting or welding or theater or music or all things that can turn into careers: art, sewing, cooking, woodworking.
Yeah.
These are all things that can turn into careers. Michelangelo was probably autistic. He was a filthy, dirty little 12-year-old, dropped out of school, refused to study Latin, become a lawyer. Ugh. Dropped out of school, but he was running around in all the churches looking at great art, and he'd learned how to use stone cutting tools. And then he started doing art, and then he got, professionals then started mentoring him. What would happen to that dirty little bratty 12-year-old today? Little Mikey today?
Yeah.
I think it's stuff we got to think about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, maybe, not going to make David too.
Yeah.
It's just that simple.
So yeah, there is a question from Anne. Could you speak about siblings of individuals with special
Well, one
needs?
of the things that my mother has talked about this is this: you don't want to get a situation in the family where so much attention goes to the autistic kid or the kid with some other really, a special need, where the siblings get left out. And they need to have some quality time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's. I remember my mother. My sister really liked theater. Now my mother worked on putting on a play that she was doing that mainly for my sister. And it was hardest for my sister because we went to the same school together. That's hard to have a weird older sister. Then I had two other siblings. They were enough younger that we never were in the same school together.
Yeah.
You don't even have parents where you have a child with very severe problems. And, at least with me, by the time I was 5 and 6 years old, we could go to a restaurant and I behaved. We could go to a movie, we could go to a show, a football game or something like that, or go to my grandmother's house, and most of the time I behaved. I had some bad moments, but I know families where they can't go anywhere, do any of those kind of activities with their kid. See, this is a problem. You've got such a spectrum here with the same name. The verbal thinkers want to lump them all together.
Yeah, I have a feeling someday it's going to be, there'll be multiple, well, I hope that there will be multiple. What we now call autism spectrum will have multiple names.
Well, here's somebody's about gut health. There's research that very clearly shows that people on the spectrum have more gastrointestinal problems. I had problems with colitis, and yeah, They kind of go together. And for some individuals, some of the diets are helpful, like taking the gluten out and the dairy out. That helps some people. It's the only claim I'll make for it. Some people find it helpful. But there's a lot of other stuff that gets way out. The gastrointestinal problems get in autism, you can go on Google Scholar and look it up. There's tons of papers.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Okay. Boy, there's a lot of stuff going on in the chat.
I know. There's a question here about how can we help girls and women get their diagnosis earlier?
Well, girls, it's not as obvious. One of the big problems for girls is getting into some very abusive relationships. That's been a big problem. They so much want a relationship. And where marriages have been the most successful is when you have like two computer programmers get together and there's that shared interest.
Right.
Yeah.
When girls are younger, they tend to not present the way
No,
that-
they don't. You see, it isn't until you get into puberty and start having,
Yeah.
you see, like most girls interested in jewelry and all that stuff like that. And then none of that stuff interested me. I have zero interest in that stuff. I mean, my idea of good breakfast reading is science and nature. I just got sent a review copy of a really interesting book on animal behavior. I'm going to read part of that tomorrow for breakfast.
Okay. Well, let's just get through some final questions here. I wanted to get back and Anna Sari asked about, do you think group projects are helpful for kids with autism? And if so, what are the conditions that would make group projects work for kids with autism who are highly visual thinkers?
Well, there's different. Let's take a robotics club, for example. There's two parts of robotics. There's the mechanical part, which would be the visual thinker's job, and the more mathematical part's the programming. So you have a mathematician kid do the programming, and the visual thinker like build stuff on the robot. Now, I find on group projects, and of course, working on these big plants, that those are group projects. But I find it works best for me to have a well-defined piece of that I'm responsible for. Like, okay, up until this rail switch on the line is my responsibility. And if something messes up further on, that's somebody else's problem. Very well defined what the project's supposed to do, the space I can put it on.
Okay.
And when I've done writing projects, I like to do I say, well, I'll write this section of the document on handling. And somebody else can write about the nutrition of the animal. That's somebody else's job. And I'll write about handling. So it's like a piece of the document. So where they say, well, okay, I'll write this section, get it done in this format. I got one right now I'm working on. This stupid web page they had didn't work. It's just been a mess. We're supposed to write it all on this web page, horrible web page.
No.
But I like having on a team project, I like having a well-defined piece of it that's mine. I will do that piece and do it right. And that, you see, like even working on a big project, you've got different equipment. Okay, different shops are building different pieces of the equipment. The electricians have their job and the plumbers their job and the people that put up the roof trusses their job. It's like subcontractors on a job. And I just like to have a well-defined assignment on a group project. And I'd always ask that. I said, well, I volunteer, I'll do this. But right here, this rail switch is where I stop. My drawing will stop there.
Yeah.
Well-defined boundary. Okay, truck unloading, I'll do that. Give me 200 feet in front of the loading dock. So then worst drivers can back into it straight.
Interesting. So that makes a
See,
group.
now, as I'm talking about that, I'm seeing a particular place where we actually took a semi out and we backed it up They didn't have quite enough room. I know they could get in. I said the driver's going to be mad. They're going to sit in and chew up their tires. And I'm now seeing us doing this. I remember going out and doing it. I said, I want to take a truck and I'm going to take it out there because we're a bit tight on space and I want to make sure they can back in.
Okay, well, here's another question just came in from Patricia. Do you think society is ready to handle the wave of individuals with autism? If not, what do you think is missing? How can we prepare for all these children who will soon be grown-ups?
Well, the problem is if they've been prepared for work properly, we wouldn't have had a problem. I don't know. Let's go to the fully verbal group, which is a big, huge pile of them. When they broadened the spectrum, because what happened when they broadened the spectrum is it increased the size of the fully verbal group. That's what it did. And I mean, I've worked with all kinds of people that were on the spectrum that owned businesses, undiagnosed.
Mm-hmm.
And I've also had parents tell me that when they finally got their kid out on a job that they liked, they said he just blossomed, he just bloomed. You get him out, you know, exposed to more stuff. I was just on an airline the other day. I got off a plane and another guy ran into in the terminal and he goes, my son loves his job. My son started out loading bags. Now he's de-icing planes. Now he's fueling planes. He's doing every ground job and he's absolutely loving an airline, loves them. That's now, I heard that. That's the kind of stuff I want to hear.
Yeah.
And the thing is, those are jobs with very precise routines, very structured, how you do them. So they have strict rules. And a person with autism, perfect ground staff for an airline. And that's an example that I ran into just a couple of weeks, very, very recently. And they adore him. He's always there. Then he can do every job now on the ground. He's learned every ground staff job. Then you start out with the not fun one. Get up in the cargo hold and sling bags. There's nothing fun about that. That's where you start. You got to pay your dues.
Right. Like you said, doors, you see a door.
Well, and you're going to have to sling a bunch of bags.
Right.
Got to pay your dues. No, it's not fun. I've watched them do it many times. Knee pads. But that's, and a lot of these jobs have just gotten through connections. Forget the interviews. Find the back doors. They're there all over the place. People aren't seeing them.
Yeah.
And that's, but we need to be getting these on a fully verbal contingent. I want 2 real jobs in the summer before they graduate from high school, period. And be careful with multitasking. Let me give you a few hints. No working memory, can't do multitasking. Don't put me on the crazy McDonald's takeout window. And the other thing is long strings of verbal information. I cannot remember it. Give me a pilot's checklist. Then I'll remember the sequence. I can't remember sequence without writing down a checklist with bullet points. Okay, children that haven't received the diagnosis, well, sometimes you need that to get services. But the thing is, you got to remember, this diagnosis is not precise. There's no lab test. When the geeks and nerds become autistic, there's no black and white dividing line. I've been to Silicon Valley. Oh, half those programmers are probably on the spectrum. Oh, here's Corin wrote, I told many parents your advice about the back door and it works. Great. Oh man, that chat there just made my day. I told many parents about the back door and it works. Their back doors are everywhere. People just don't see them. It's like when I went up to the editor to get his card and then I produced the article. And those back doors aren't open very long. You have to step through them. They're there. Back door, forget the interviews, forget HR. Showing my drawings to the human resource department would be useless. I knew I had to get my drawings to the engineering department because they'd appreciate them. And that's what I did.
Amen.
I think right now, it can help get, it made me so happy when, mom said, got my kid off the video games and they got him into cars and now he's fixing trains and the railroad just loves him. Well, that's what I want to hear. And now I want to make it clear that skilled trades aren't for everybody. You see that my kind of mind are going to be art, animal jobs, and photography, mechanics. That's my kind of mathematicians, computers, programming, music, mathematics, physics, chemistry, and word thinkers. Of course, most of them are educators.
Yeah.
And the one thing the educators have got to realize is that those other kinds of minds think differently. They're very concerned that people we need in science. I just listened to like 3 brilliant high school students, science fair students. They were pretty nerdy. Yeah, and we need them. We need
Wow.
them. They're
Mhm.
and we've got to start looking at what a kid can do. I watched the Paralympics the other night. Boy, watching the slalom skiing, sit down slalom skiing. They got an amazing piece of equipment now for it.
Oh.
That's the kind of stuff I like. And they had another sled hockey. I'm really glad I got to see that because that's what you can do.
Mhm. Yeah.
I know it's very hard for the parents that have the very, very severe individuals. They're not going to be, fixing cars or programming computers or teaching school or any other thing like that. But even them, there's things they can do. There's farm programs where some of them are very successful working in greenhouses outside. And they know the difference between fake busy work and real work. You make them do fake busy work, and then they throw a fit when they throw a fit because they know it's fake busy work.
Yeah. Wow. Just I know.
Oh, here's a
people have-
question. A 4-year-old, how can you
Yeah.
tell what kind of learner your 4-year-old is? That's almost too young. There are a few cases where it shows up that young, but my art ability showed up more like 7 and 8. Now, there's some exceptions to that, but a lot of kids, the 4-year-old's pretty young. Some of the math kids will go for a lot of patterns. There's some wonderful mathematics websites. Wolfram Mathematica, that's a wonderful website. No,
What's it called?
No, 4-year-old, you may not see it, but
Mhm.
get them out doing lots of things and do some of my projects. They can start making things like paper airplane. The website was Wolfram Mathematica. Wolf like the wolf and wolf ram. Wolf and then ram like a sheep. Wolfram Mathematica. There's also another website, code.org, free programming materials. Yeah, Wolfram Mathematica. Wolfram Mathematica. Yeah,
Okay.
that's a wonderful website. It's free.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of fabulous stuff online if you just look. People don't look. There's a lot of rubbish online.
Yeah.
There's also all kinds of, you want to look at cool type protein symmetry into Google Images.
Yeah.
You will see beautiful cathedral windows and they're inside your body.
Absolutely.
And it's all mathematics inside your body in beautiful patterns. I get really excited about stuff like that. Like to see a kid take off with that kind of stuff. Oh, I was going to tell you about the greatest flight I had the other day. I got to sit next to a construction manager lady, and we had a 2-hour marvelous conversation about concrete work, concrete forming, tilt-up concrete. It was really fun to talk about concrete forming.
Yeah.
Probably don't get to talk about that with too many women, do you?
No, well, we talked about it. We talked about all the ways people cheat on concrete work and everything else, how to prevent it. But that, Yeah, but the fellow, that's shared interests. Once a really successful marriage, to a lady I know, the two computer programmers, and when they would get married, they had to have romantic dinners, white tablecloth, candles, really nice, beautiful restaurant, because you got to set the stage for a really romantic conversation about computer data storage systems, because it's just so interesting. Like I find stuff like logistics really interesting.
Oh, well, that's very important. We're hearing a lot about
But the thing
logistics.
is, the visual thinkers, the people who are going to care about this stuff and try and keep it working. And we're having all kinds of problems now.
Yeah. So the trick is to just find what they're most interested in.
But on the other hand, they've got to get exposed to enough different things. How are you going to get interested in
Yeah.
metalworking if you're not exposed? How could you get interested in theater if you weren't exposed? Or
Right.
music, or art, or cooking, or sewing, or
Right.
unless you were exposed. Well, Michelangelo was exposed to great art. Every church was commissioning it, and the tools, stone cutting tools.
Yeah.
Now,
And he had
otherwise,
a
there
great
would have been no
mentor.
David.
Yeah.
And then later on, the mentoring came.
Yeah. Yeah. When your mentor is Da Vinci, right?
Yeah.
Oh, that Divergent Mind by, I'll have to look at that book.
Yeah,
I'll have to read it.
Divergent.
I haven't read it, so let me
Okay.
just write that down.
Yeah, Divergent Mind by Gennaro Nierenberg.
And what is the main thing? Well, we need the different kinds of minds. And I have not read that. Neurodiversity project. Well, the thing is, thing I've learned, and I've learned this on projects I've worked on, is that we need the different kinds of minds have complementary skills, and we really, really need the different kinds of minds working together and recognizing where each kind of mind has a valuable contribution. And I'm worried that too many kids, they don't get exposed to enough stuff to find out that, they might like to play a musical instrument.
Mhm.
And I'm obviously skilled trades aren't for everybody, but I'm talking about real high-end skilled trades. I'm talking about people that are inventing stuff, they're filing patents, owning large businesses.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
it's pretty late. I know it's probably 9 p.m.
It's 9 o'clock here. Yeah.
Yeah. Just real quick, how can people, if they want to follow, how can people follow you?
Well, they can write to Temple Grandin on templegrandin.com for autism. And then my livestock website is just grandin.com, and you can't contact me through that. But templegrandin.com, you can write to me. How do my parents protect me against discrimination? My parents weren't around when I was out in the feed yards in Arizona. They were back in New York.
Yeah.
I had to make myself very good at what I did, and I wrote for that magazine, and that helped. I got respect for that. And I remember they didn't want to let me into the Arizona cattle feeders meeting to cover their meeting. And I finally talked them into letting me in. And I wrote a really good article, and I made sure I summarized each one of the speeches really accurately. And I very quickly got a reputation that when I covered the Arizona cattle feeders meeting, I did not misquote people, and that I wrote good articles. And that's another thing that got me respect, was my writing in the livestock press. I did a good job as livestock editor for that magazine. And it, made myself really good at what I did. Yeah, I did get discriminated against. Oh, I worked for a construction company, and they had a vendor appreciation party, and I was told I wasn't allowed to go because I was a woman. That was not nice. That was in the 70s. It was terrible.
Yeah.
But but my approach was the electricity used in the constructive way, not the destructive way. I was going to prove that I wasn't stupid, that I could do it.
Well, Temple.
Power of Introverts, that book, Quiet. Yes, I have read
yes.
that. That's a good book. That one I have read.
I've
Yeah.
read that. That's good.
Yeah, that's an excellent book. And I'm going to have to look up Divergent Lines, but I'm not going to do it right now because I'm tired.
Yeah, well, we better
Get up early.
let you go. You have to prepare for your teaching tomorrow.
Yeah, I can't be tired of my class. I gotta be well
Yeah,
rested for that.
well, again, templegrandin.com.
Yeah,
And
that's the autism website. And then
yeah,
Grandin.com is my livestock website.
grandin.com.
That's for livestock.
Okay,
And
grandin.com.
templegrandin.com is the autism website.
And
And I
again,
just want to see kids get out and do things.
yes.
And a lot of these kids get a lot of, what the parents have to do is stretch. You don't chuck them in the deep end, like put them in a crazy takeout window. You don't do that. But if you don't stretch them some, they don't develop.
Yep.
That's the problem.
Interesting.
Because a bottom-up thinker, you got to fill that database, get them out there doing things. And then they find out that they're loving it. And there's been people, had a job at office supply store, loved it. Boy, he knew every printer in the place. And people appreciated that. It's specialized retail. Selling cars has been a very successful job for people on the spectrum. Very successful for the more verbal type thinkers. They know every car out there and every feature on it. There have been teenagers that have gone into family dealership to start selling cars. Now, they couldn't drive them, obviously. They were allowed to demo in park. They were very good at demo in park. They
All
got
right.
the car sold before it was test driven.
Interesting.
Yeah. And again, your upcoming book that people can pre-order,
It's called Visual Thinking.
Visual Thinking.
And they need to put my name in along with it. Visual Thinking, Temple Grandin. They need to put my name in along with that to find it. Visual Thinking, Temple Grandin into Amazon. You will find it.
Okay.
Visual Thinking, Temple Grandin. And
And when's it coming out?
it's coming out in the fall. Books have got a long print lag time.
Yeah.
There's printing issues. Because we're going to get it the galley proofed real soon. But I just got a review copy of this really cool animal behavior book, and I got the galley proof now for it, and its pub date September. There's another publisher, so they've got the same problem.
Yeah, I think
I'm not
having
happy the
a
lag
problem.
time's that long, but that's just what they're doing.
Yeah. Well, everything is.
Everything is messed up, but they're taking pre-orders right now, and there's a little description about the book on there, and then when I get some galley proofs, I can't sell them, but I can wave them around and show them to you.
Well, Temple, if you ever up to it, if you want to promote your book with Livermore Public Library, you're always welcome. We'd love to have you back.
Well,
You know.
I just want to see these kids get out and be successful, because what drives me crazy is to travel back and forth between industry and the autism world. I'm seeing a junior edition of Elon Musk going nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
You see, that's the thing that I'm so glad that he disclosed on Saturday Night Live, because when I read Ashley Vance's book, I was sure he was on the spectrum, but I couldn't say it until he disclosed.
Really? Wow.
I've thought he was autistic for years, but couldn't say it. I would just hold the book up and go, here's some quotes out of it. Read the first part of it.
Have you ever reached out to him, Elon Musk? Has he ever?
I talked to somebody who might reach out to him. No, I hadn't actually, but I really like what he does.
Yeah.
When the SpaceX docked with the space station, I geeked out on a 3-hour live feed. Yeah,
Isn't that great?
I did. I geeked out
Wow.
on that.
It's just remarkable.
I watched that whole live feed. That was really cool.
All right.
But
Yeah, I'm not sure that schools do a really good job of preparing kids for,
well, I'm preparing kids for tests, and I couldn't graduate in California. I couldn't pass the algebra test. I've often thought, what would I do if someone waved a magic wand, and I was living in California, coming out of a low-income area. They waved a magic wand. I'm 18. I just flunked out of high school, but I had the knowledge I got now. I had all my knowledge. I know where the back doors are. Oh, I'd head straight for the Tesla factory, the Amazon warehouse. And because I want to design the warehouse of the future, I want to get in their space program. Or big corporations have gigantic back doors and you can move around in them. And I know how they work now. This huge back doors. And I have seen people go into the meat industry, get a job on the floor. 15 years later, they're building a new plant addition, running the project. Barely graduate from high school. Then you get to play with giant Legos with a crane.
Okay.
And
Well, we better let you go, Temple. I know we could speak to you all night, but
Probably.
yeah, thank you so much, Temple Grandin, for
that's
this
right. I
memorable
love our geeks and the
program.
nerds. We need them.
Yes,
We need them.
yes,
And we're going to have to be, the supply chain's getting messed up now. We're going to be needing them even more.
absolutely. So we're so grateful to have this opportunity to speak with you. Let me just say that Temple is volunteering her time with us tonight. So I am so grateful, Temple. It's truly an honor to meet you and to speak with you. So please join us for our other Livermore Reads Together events at the Livermore Public Library.
Okay.
We have
Well,
another.
I'm going to go to bed because I get up early.
Oh,
and
yes, yes. No, no,
get
go.
ready for my class.
Yes, yes. So to Temple, Cynthia, and all our attendees, take care.
All right. Goodbye. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. It was a
I'm going to
pleasure.
take off right now.
Good night.